The time has undoubtedly come for Britain to reckon with the legal and the moral imperatives of recognising the state of Palestine. It's not merely a symbolic gesture nor a simplistic rebuke of Israel's actions. It is at its core a test of whether the United Kingdom can exercise its foreign policy prerogatives with clarity, consistency and courage. So, beginning by acknowledging the elephant in the room, which is Hamas, Gaza is presently governed by a prescribed terrorist organisation, and recognising Palestine does not therefore imply legitimising Hamas. Rather, it affirms the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, and it strengthens the more moderate elements within the Palestinian polity, not least the Palestinian Authority, which still holds sway in the West Bank. The British government has long argued that recognition must be part of a wider peace process, but that formula is becoming morally and diplomatically untenable. Over 140 UN member states have already recognised Palestine, including several EU allies. President Macron is moving forward. The Irish, Norwegians and Spanish have already done so, and Britain is increasingly out of step. So, I think there are 6 legal complications that need to be navigated before Britain or anyone can choose recognition. The Monte Vido criteria, first of all, is Palestine a state? Under the Monte Vido Convention in 1933, a state must have, I think, 4 things: a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and a capacity to engage in relations with other states. And Palestine clearly has a people. It has territory, albeit fragmented and occupied. It has governments, plural, alas, with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza, and the latter creates legal ambiguity but not paralysis. Recognition is not a reward for government or for governance. It's a political act that can precede and catalyse state building. Over 130 states have taken that view, and we are not charting unknown waters in that. Then the UK has prerogative power, and recognition of states is a royal prerogative power exercised by the Foreign Secretary. It doesn't require an act of Parliament, but legal challenge could arise if recognition triggers changes in treaty obligations or state conduct, such as trade, aid or arms sales, and courts might entertain judicial reviews on procedural or constitutional grounds if Parliament is bypassed, particularly given the 2014 Commons vote in favour of recognition. The UK maintains trade agreements and defence cooperation with Israel, including the UK-Israel Trade and Partnership Agreement of 2020, and recognition could trigger accusations of a breach or cause Israel to suspend that cooperation. And the legal issue here is not insurmountable, but it is complex. Any recognition would need to be worded carefully, distinguishing between recognising Palestinian statehood and endorsing its current government, or making territorial determinations, especially on Jerusalem. Palestine is currently a non-member observer state at the United Nations, and full membership would require Security Council approval, and the US would almost certainly veto that. A unilateral recognition by the UK, therefore, doesn't translate into formal UN status, and legally this risks being seen as theatrical or diplomatically empty unless part of a coordinated international push. Yet as a standalone move, it sends a message that sovereignty and self-determination are not hostage to military occupation or diplomatic obstruction. And Palestine is a party to the Rome Statute. The ICC is investigating alleged war crimes in both Gaza and the West Bank. And UK recognition could be seen as strengthening Palestine's legal status in these proceedings. That would strain relations with Israel and the United States, particularly if British citizens or allies are implicated in such investigations. However, international justice must not be sacrificed on the altar of political expedience, and recognition is not an endorsement of one side's guilt. It's a recognition that both peoples deserve the protections and the obligations of law. And when we come back down to the thorny issue of genocide, for example, there seems no doubt that there were genocidal aims in Hamas's attack on Israel in October, and increasingly I think it's going to be very difficult for for the current Israeli administration to duck and to skirt around the very realistic charges of genocide which are being made against the current Israeli administration. Legal consequences may follow from diplomatic retaliation. Israel could suspend bilateral agreements. The United States could withhold cooperation or intelligence sharing. These are not strictly legal constraints, but their effects can cascade into legal domains. And Britain must ask, will we shape policy according to principles or submit policy to the threats of our allies? And so recognition needs to be linked to precision. There's no legal bar to recognition, but there are these 6 entangled legal and diplomatic risks that must be confronted and not denied. The first is the disputed statehood criteria. The second is the constitutional prerogative versus parliamentary oversight. The third, trade and treaty complications. The fourth, UN procedural blocks. The fifth, ICC entanglements. And the sixth, the diplomatic relationships and the retaliation that can occur with the legal consequences of recognizing Palestine. But we are not hostages to complexity. Recognition need not mean the endorsement of Hamas, and it can be calibrated. Recognition of the Palestinian state, not necessarily its current government structures. And we must be honest, delay is not neutrality. It's a tacit approval of a status quo that's morally repugnant and legally corrosive. As one MP put it, every moment of inaction is a deliberate choice. And it's time we made the right one. So with Keir Starmer's decision to convene the cabinet next week, I believe, during the summer recess, it's an extraordinary thing to demand. But I think it's the right thing to do, and to do it as fast as possible, and to get on with that process rather than leaving it as some sort of reward within a peace treaty. We need to kickstart that peace treaty, and that peace treaty needs to be linked to a realistic ceasefire. There's no point in having a ceasefire without a peace treaty. There's no point, of course, in having a peace treaty without a ceasefire. The two things go together. And walking down the street calling for a ceasefire without peace is nonsensical. Walking down the street and calling for peace without a ceasefire is equally nonsensical. But demanding a recognition of Palestine, now that is something that I think activists could consider and put some weight on the government to reach that conclusion. That is something that is achievable, and a sort of public call for that is something that would be efficacious.